So, all right, guys, we got to get this one right. On three, we're going to say, welcome back to Extraordinary Thoughts for the Ordinary Mind. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to Extraordinary Minds.
And we back.
That'll work right there.
Yeah.
And we back. And we
Yeah.
And we back. And we back. And we
Y'all did y'all best. And that's all that matters.
Now, before we get started with this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this episode, share this podcast, and if you can, do me a favor, head on down to the review section and leave an honest review, because this podcast was dedicated to helping us become a better version of ourselves. And I don't know what that version is, but I know that just like we need a little bit more money, just like we need a little bit more sleep, just like we need a little bit more of anything in life, we deserve to be a little better than what we are right now. What's going on, everybody? It's that ordinary podcaster with the extraordinary thoughts that tells you to stop being great and be extraordinary. I'm your host, Demetrius Thickman, also known as Meech Speaks, and welcome back to another episode of Extraordinary Thoughts for the Ordinary Mind. All right, so your phone is not deceiving you. Your notifications are not deceiving you. Yes, this is a new episode, and yes, it's on a Friday. And the reason why I wanted to drop this episode on a Friday is because I believe that the content in this episode, like the things I'm about to talk about in this episode, it ain't meant for a Monday. You know, it ain't meant for the beginning of your week and, you go through the week with the tools that I gave you for this episode, This episode is meant for the weekend. It needs time for you to marinate on it. The things that I'm about to talk about in this episode, if you want to utilize it and practice it, you need time. You need space. You might need some alone time. You might need to get away. You might need to go to your favorite spot and just be alone for a little bit. And that's why I want to drop this episode on Friday. But don't worry, we're going to put another episode out on Monday. Now, if you're wondering why I sound like Batman, yes, I got my man voice back. And as much as I like how I sound when I lose my voice, you know what I mean? Like, as much as I like how I sound, over a recording, it fucking sounds like I'm Batman. It sounds like I want to say, where's the commissioner? It sounds like I want to say Joker. And, it definitely is definitely like a night and day difference to how I normally sound. But today, honestly, before I even talk about today, I really want to just go back into my catalog. Because one of my first episodes was Recharge. And in that episode, I talked about, taking that break before you break. I talked about the pressure cooker. And I talked about how sometimes we go through the week, or we go through a month, or we go through a year, or we just go through an experience. And the emotions that we receive or we experience during that experience, we don't really acknowledge. We don't acknowledge them. We compress them. We put them deep inside. And unknowingly, what happens is that those emotions, and I really want a lot of people to understand, is that when you don't acknowledge your emotions, right, it's not like they just fucking dissipate. It's not like they just, dissolve into somewhere else, or they go somewhere else. Like, energy don't go somewhere else. It just doesn't, let me rephrase that. Energy just doesn't disappear. It has to go somewhere else. And it has to find an outlet. And if it cannot find an outlet, it will make an outlet. And when I talked about the pressure cooker, I emphasized and I really stressed the fact that you needed to take that break before you break. You really needed to take that break before you break. And that was probably an episode that I needed to hear. It was definitely an episode that I needed to hear. Now, last week, I addressed my absence on the podcast, and I talked about how I had been gone for 2 months. And in those 2 months, it hasn't really just been 2 months. It's been almost a year. A year of me not acknowledging my emotions. It's been a year, right? It's been a year of me just compounding and compressing emotions that I should have expressed, words that I should have said, things that I should have got off my chest. No, I never did that. I just kept it to myself. And for a year straight, I just kept compounding. kept compressing. And these last 2 months, it just seems like I just didn't have any space anymore. I didn't have any space. And I bring that up because today I broke. Today the pressure couldn't be relieved anymore. Or let me change that. Today the pressure was finally relieved. And it was relieved in the worst way possible. And if you know what I'm talking about, I had an outburst. I had an emotional outburst. I had a emotional break. I lashed out. And it's one of the things where when you have one of those, we always talk about like, you finally are getting the shit off your chest. You know what I mean? And do me a favor real quick. As you're listening to this episode, I just really want you to recall a moment where you had one of those times where you was just so stressed out that one little thing, like it just felt like as if that last little drop of water, you feel me? It just overflowed the cup. And next thing you know, everything just started coming out. Are you thinking about that time? And that's exactly what it felt like. Something that I probably would have compressed. Something that I probably wouldn't even acknowledged. Something that I probably wouldn't really gave a fuck about. It just was the straw that broke the camel's back because I was already dealing with a whole bunch of other shit. I was already upset about a whole bunch of other shit. I was already hurt by a lot of other things. And I just couldn't take it. And I broke. And I know it's somebody right now that's probably saying like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy that you finally got that off your chest. I bet you feel relieved right now. And I do. I do feel relief. I do feel like a sense of relief. I do feel a sense of, everything that I had been holding in, I finally got it off my chest. Yeah, I feel that. But I also feel ashamed. I also feel embarrassed. I also feel all of these other emotions, right? I feel these other emotions that we don't talk about. And what's so crazy about this, right? Is that before I had the outburst, before I lashed out, an old friend of mine, who I always talk to, we always exchange about like where we're at mentally, where we're at emotionally, where we're at, just in our lives in general. I had known this person since I was a kid. So we got a little history. And you probably got one of those people in your life right now where you got history with them. So you feel comfortable with telling them what's on your mind. You tell them exactly what's on your mind and you don't hide how you truly feel. You let them know because it's a space that y'all have. It's a safe space. And as we saw each other, we started talking. And one thing that he kept echoing, you know what I mean? Like he kept reinforcing was, hey man, make sure you take care of your mental. You know what I mean? Like, hey man, take care of your mental. Yeah, you look good physically, but make sure you're taking care of your mental right now. And to be honest with you, I quite couldn't understand. I quite couldn't understand why he kept enforcing, that I would take care of my mental health so much. Like I got it. You know what I mean? Like I got it. And I just really want to stop for a second because right before we have like that emotional break, like right before we lash out, we really think that we got it. Like we really think that we're good. And everyone else can see that we're not good except for us. You know what I mean? Like, no, to be honest with you, we can see it. We just not acknowledging it. We can see it. We just not acknowledging it. And he could see it clear as day that there's something, it's weighing on me. It's heavy on me. And even in the beginning of the conversation, he said, are you okay? And I said, yeah. And we tried to, I tried to, change the conversation, direct it to somewhere else. And he said, dog, are you all right? It's just something that just ain't right with you. And you can tell in his body language that he knows that there's more that I need to be saying to him, but he ain't going to pry. He ain't going to pull because he knows that whatever he's pulling at right now, it's a sensitive subject. You know what I'm talking about? You ever had one of them like zits on your face? Like a pimple on your face and it's almost ready. It's ready to pop. And if any little bit of pressure on that area right there will cause it to pop, he was recognizing it just like that. And all he could say was, hey man, you need to take care of your mental. You need to take care of your mental. And although that's a short sentence if you read between it, right? Like if you read between it, he's saying you need to take a break. He's saying you need to get away from everybody. You need to go somewhere and let that shit out because you look like you're about to pop. Exactly what I did. I popped. And yeah, it was something that definitely could have been avoided. I walked in and, we started going back and forth, and next thing you know, I end up just letting it all out. I talked about how I was stressed. I talked about how I was overworked. I talked about how I was frustrated with everyone around me. I told him how much I wasn't happy. I told him everything. And did it feel good to get it off my chest? Yes, it did. And I really want someone to understand that I'm not minimizing how I feel. I'm not minimizing how I feel. Because it did feel good to get it off my chest. But at the exact same time, that's not how I wanted to do it. That's not how I wanted to do it. I don't want to yell when I'm finally at my breaking point. I don't want to have an emotional outburst when I'm finally at my breaking point. I don't want to wait until I get to my breaking point to finally let everyone know around me how stressed I have been, how much pressure I have been under, how much what I think about myself. And that's one thing that I want a lot of people to understand is that when you have one of those outbursts, you feel me? You lose the narrative. You lose control of the narrative. And what I mean when I say when you lose control of the narrative, right? You lose the ability to actually articulate your words in a way that is expressed accurately to how you truly feel. When you have an outburst, you let that shit out. That shit is let out. It's let out in all type of ways. You know what I mean? It's let out with tears. It's let out with yelling. It's let out with just tension in your body. It's let out with cuss words. It's coming out in its rawest form possible. You feel me? I'm talking about it's coming out in its rawest form possible. But at the same time, although it truly feels good to finally get it off your chest, I really want you to understand this right here is that it could have been done a different way. It could have been done a different way. Because although it came out in its rawest form possible, right? Relationships get torn. Bridges get burned. Your image, it get a little stain on it. You know what I mean? And I know somebody right now saying, I don't care about all of that. I'm finally, I putting myself first, I'm putting myself first. Self-love, being mindful. I'm doing all of the things. No. Fuck all of that. Because if you've made it to this point right here, ain't been a lot of self-love for you. If you have made it to the point where you're having an emotional outburst towards somebody, right? You haven't been putting yourself first. Because if you had been putting yourself first, you would never make it to this point. I can assure you that right there. And you can turn this shit off if you think I'm lying. I got to this point because I had not been putting myself first. I had not been practicing the things that I talk about. I have not been utilizing the things that I have experienced. I thought that if I work my way, that I would eventually just get that energy out instead of just finding an outlet to get that energy out. I thought work would do it. Not realizing that I'm overburdened. Not realizing that I'm overworked. I'm under nutrition, oh God. That was a terrible word. Not realizing I'm undermanned. Not realizing that I actually need a break. And it frustrates me. It frustrates me because I know better than that. So now that I'm done beating myself up, right? Now that I'm done going through those emotional channels of relief, embarrassment, shame, regret, I want to be proactive now. And with that, as we dive into this episode, I really want to talk about how can we prevent? How can we prevent the emotional outbursts? How can we prevent the lashing out? How can we prevent the burning of the bridges, the strained relationships, the negative public image? How can we prevent losing control of our narrative? And the first thing that I really want you to understand is that you need to listen. Not listen to me, but I need you to listen to your body. See, fun thing about it is that our bodies have a way of reacting towards stress. You know, whether that's tension in our shoulders, body aches, headaches, it's always something that our body, because it's deep inside of us. Our bodies subconsciously know how to react under stress. Now, depending on what your job is, and for me, I'm going to use me as an example. My job is a very physically demanding job. It's very physically demanding. And I constantly ignore this sign. I ignore this sign because I always associate it with something else. You know what I mean? Like the tension in my shoulders, I think that it's from punching. I think that the tension in my shoulders is from grabbing or moving someone. I think that that's where the tension is coming from, not realizing that the tension, the real tension from it is coming from stress. I'm talking about, like, I used to get a pain, right? Used to get a pain in my neck, and it would be so severe that I couldn't even turn my head. I used to get a pain so bad that it would pinch this nerve in my neck, and it would cause my left arm to just numb. It would go completely numb to the point where I couldn't even use it. And I thought that it was a work-related injury, not realizing I'm just under a lot of stress right now. I'm just so fucking stressed out right now. My body is trying to let me know something is wrong. I'm in danger. We're overloaded. This shit's in the fucking red, Demetrius. You got to do something about it. And I'm just shrugging it off. I'm shrugging it off. My body, like, for some of y'all right now, I want you to do me a favor. Look at your dashboard. All right, look at your dashboard. You see all them lights on your dashboard? You feel me? That's what my body was right at that point. The check engine light was on, fucking the air pressure and the tires was on, the transmission light was on, all type of shit was on. It was so many things on, I would have to pull out a manual just to find out why all of this stuff is coming on. My body was letting me know exactly what the hell was going on, and I ignored it. So when I tell you, like, if you want to prevent like an emotional outburst, right? You have to pay attention to your body. You have to. Because your body is going to be tracking. Your mind can tell your body a whole bunch of other things, but one thing your mind can't tell your body is how the fuck to react. It can't tell it how to react under stress. We can think to ourselves like, hey man, we got to tough it out. We got to shrug this shit off. We got to keep it pushing. We got to come up with some coping mechanisms. Your body is recognizing that it's in danger. And it's subconsciously releasing things inside of you that's like, yo, like, I'm getting prepared for something. I just don't know what it is. And that's exactly what my body was doing. The next I really want you to understand is that you have to learn to express your feelings. Okay? You have to learn to express your feelings in a healthy way. For me, expressing my feelings, right? I always found it. I have always found it therapeutic to come to this podcast. So you can only imagine, right? You can only imagine. And I think that this was going to be a recipe. It was a recipe for disaster. You feel me? Like, in hindsight, now that I look back on it, right? This was only a matter of time. And like, I told somebody about this situation today, and they said it was only a matter of time. I was wondering when it was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. All right. And I'll dive into that portion real quick. But I really wanted you to understand that it was really because I was not expressing how I felt anymore. I literally was just meandering through the day. It got so bad that I can't, to be honest with you right now, I can't even recognize the days in these past 2 months. Everything has bled over. It's all just bled over. Monday has been just one long Monday for me. I don't even understand when I went on. I can't even tell you when I went on the weekend, to be honest, because I've just been so consumed. I stopped podcasting. So when I tell you that it's very therapeutic to come on air and just express how I feel, because, you know, one thing that I try to tell people is that I'm not just making up topics. These topics I've been through. These topics I'm going through. These are topics that I'm currently in right now. So I'm not expressing. So where the fuck do you think the emotions are going? Where do you think the feelings are going? And this is one thing that I really want to just stop right real quick and just address, is that if you're under stress, right? If you got some shit going on in your life right now and you ain't got a fucking outlet, you are bound to self-destruct somewhere in some place, and you're going to do it so bad that you're probably not going to be able to recover from it, because them emotions are going to come out in the worst way possible because you have lost control of them. And I need you. I really need you. Like, hear it in my voice. Hear this pain in my voice. I really need you right now to find an outlet. I need you to find an outlet. If you gonna launch a podcast, I need you to launch a podcast and put all of that shit on the air. If you need the journal, I need you to go to fucking Walmart right now, buy you. No, don't go to Walmart. Go to Target. I need you to go to Target real quick and get you a notebook and start writing it all down. If you need to vent, I need you to vent. I need you to do something real quick to get this shit off of your chest. That's why I really want to drop this episode on this Friday, so that way you had time to be able to prepare yourself going into this Monday. I need you to find a place real quick to go so you can express your feelings. Because energy has to go somewhere. Energy has to go somewhere. What you receive, it has to come out. It cannot stay in forever. Next, and I mentioned this in my last episode, you know, as I talked about fawning. And one of the biggest things that I brought up is that people that fawn, we have a tendency to not speak up. We will speak up in the best interest to everyone around us except for ourselves. Now, the thing that I want us to understand is that in order to prevent an emotional outburst, right, to prevent you from lashing out, you have to speak up. You have to speak up in the now. And I'm going to tell you, like, what's the repercussions when you don't speak up? Them words that you wish you would have said, they will still stay in your head. Them emotions that you felt in that moment that you did not express how you felt, they will still lie dormant within your body. You're going to get in a car and you're going to have that conversation again inside your head because you know that that's something that should have been said then, but now you have to address it now. You're constantly going to think about it. It will live rent-free inside of your head, right? So rather than deal with that turmoil, rather than deal with that agony of wishing that you would have done it, I need you to do it now. I need you to do it now. I need you to speak up. I need you to say what's on your mind now. If you're in a relationship, I need you to go ahead and tell them, hey, look, man, I'm coming from a place of love, but I need you to understand how I'm feeling. If you at work right now, hey, with all due respect, I mean this in the most professional way, but I need you to understand how I'm feeling about this. For you military type, I need you to understand, pull that motherfucker off to the side, right? Pull him off to the side. Because, you know, things get weird when other people are around. So pull him off to the side and let them know exactly how you feeling. Because it lies dormant when you don't speak up for yourself. Trust me, I understand. Do you know how many times I would get in the car and on that drive home, you know why I wasn't getting on social media and showing my stories? Because I was too busy having a personal conversation with myself about what I should have said at work, how I should have handled things in my life. I've been having so many conversations with myself, I forgot that there are other people around me. And although I'm having these conversations with myself, I'm not even putting myself first. Once I said that selfish people are happier and they live longer because they're not afraid to draw the line in the sand. And I still stand behind that message. I still do. Because a selfish person gonna let you know exactly how they feel. They do not give a fuck about the energy in the room. They do not give a fuck. They put themselves first. And I need you to understand that if you want to be healthy, right? Like if you want to live, you can't say a stress-free life, but you want to live a life with minimum stress in it, you got to be selfish. And ain't nothing wrong with being selfish. Ain't nothing wrong with putting yourself first. I want you to understand this as we dive deeper into this episode, right? As we dive deeper into this episode, I want you to understand real quick because you ain't good. None of this shit matters if you too afraid to be selfish. None of this will ever matter. This episode will mean nothing if you are afraid to be selfish. If you think that being selfish is bad, then this episode, it does not mean anything to you. So I want to clear the air on what selfish is. See, we're not hoarding food from our tribe. Being selfish now is saying things that are hurting you and getting them out. Being selfish now is finally putting yourself first instead of putting everyone else first. Because the one thing that I have learned in these last 2 months is that when you put everyone else first, right? When you put everyone else first, you will always come second. You will always come second. You will always. And the thing about that is that in your life, you have put everyone else first. But unfortunately, in their lives, they have also put themselves first. So you come second in two perspectives. You come second in your life and you also come second in their lives. So you lose on both ends. So I'm going to just go ahead and just get this shit out there right now. You need to put yourself first. You do. Because you deserve it. Nobody deserves to go home with emotions lying dormant in them, negative ones, right? Nobody deserves to have to bite their tongue because they're afraid of how they gonna make everybody else feel, but everybody ain't afraid to say what they feel. Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves to be second place in their own life. So when I tell you I need you to speak up, I really need you to speak up. Next, make time for self-love. All right. And I don't know when it started. But when I talk about self-love, I always have like this negative tone for it. You know what I mean? And my negative tone is really just associated with everybody saying it and not necessarily practicing it. My negative tone really comes from the fact that everybody says it, but they don't truly understand what it is. So that's where my negative tone comes from. But understand that I'm well aware that self-love is very important and I understand exactly what it is. So when I tell you that I need you to make time for self-love, I really need you to. And when we say like make time for self-love, making time for self-love is needed on the bad day. It's needed on the day that when you had all of that shit piled on your plate, when shit didn't go well, when you had an argument, when you had an outburst, when you just ain't feeling yourself. See, we always want to do things on a good day. We want to go out and be around people on a good day. We want to go to parties or go to outings on a good day. We want to get dressed up and shit for occasions, but that ain't when you really need it. You feel me? Like, that's not when you really need it. When I say make time for it, make time for when you really need it. Like you really need self-love when you ain't receiving love, not when you're around love already. That shit is just abundance. Like I thought I was practicing self-love a couple of years back when I was in my best form, when I was in one of my best forms. Let me rephrase that. I thought that I was practicing self-love and I was practicing a form of it, but I wasn't using it when I actually needed it. I was already receiving accolations. I was already receiving praise. I was already skin glowing, not smoking, looking good, feeling great. I didn't really need it because I was receiving so much of it. The days that I needed it, I didn't give it to myself. Gotta stop yourself from crying sometimes. On the days that I felt worthless, on the days where I felt inadequate, I was nowhere to be found to give myself love. It took me it took me to be at my lowest point, right? To realize that this is the moment where I need love. And if I can't get it from anybody else, then goddamn it, I need to be able to give it to myself. And that's exactly what I did. I think I finally, I had a moment where I just was down at my lowest point. I was completely burnt out. And during these times, what I would usually do is I would get to the house and, I would pour me one of the coldest, strongest of drinks. Go in my garage, turn some music on, smoke a cigarette, and just drink. And I didn't want to do that this time. And look. Before we keep going, I really want to say this real quick. I ain't trying to criticize how you love yourself. I ain't trying to criticize how you decompress. I'm going to just tell you right there, it's just, in that moment right there, that just wasn't the love that I needed. Instead, what I did, when I was at my lowest point, I hopped in the shower. I took a hot shower. As soon as I hopped out, I probably put some cologne on. I looked in my closet. I found me a fit. I put that on. I looked in the mirror. I turned. I was looking at myself, making sure I was looking good. You feel me? Grabbed my oldest daughter. We went on a date. Went to go see a movie, and then we went out to eat. Not only did I take myself out, but I wanted to make somebody else happy too. And I realized that this is what I wanted. This is what I truly needed. Now, in most cases, when you have a hard day at work, you don't want to be around no kids. Hell, when you have a hard day at work, you don't want to be around people in general. But that's what I would have did if I would have had energy, quote unquote. That's what I would have did if I was having a good day. You feel me? That's what I would have did if I was in a good mood. We don't give ourselves the opportunity to turn our bad moods into good moods. We don't give ourselves an opportunity to turn that negative energy into some good energy. We drink it away. We soak it away. We brood it away. That's what we think that we're doing. So when I tell you make time for some self-love, make time for it as if you were in a good mood, because deep down you really need it. You really need that love right now. Pay attention to your environment. When I say pay attention to your environment, your environment has a way of letting you know that you are probably at your limit. And what I mean by that is it's your interactions towards everyone. The same way that, my friend, he was telling me, hey man, you need to take care of your mental. If I was truly paying attention to what he was saying, I would have heard the sign. If I was paying attention to my environment, I would have realized that the way that I was addressing everyone around me had actually changed. I was very short with everyone around me. My frustration with everyone around me had finally just reached its breaking point, but I wasn't acknowledging it. I actually lashed out on somebody. It was so quick that I caught myself and I wasn't paying attention. Little things were starting to irritate me. When it gets to that point, right, the little things are starting to irritate you, that's when you're really at that point. You're really at that point and you're just not acknowledging it. You're not acknowledging it. Your environment is trying to tell you that, hey, look, man, something ain't right, bro. You feel me? The way that this ain't the normal scheme of maneuver. I need you to understand that, bro. Something ain't going good. You need to pay attention. And as we come to a close of this episode, I would be remiss if I just didn't say this. If it's just too much, get help. Get help. And there's a plethora of resources out there, and if you're in the military, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The military OneSource provides so many resources. It does. But, we don't use them because we always look at it as a negative effect. We always look at it in a negative light. Like a lot right now, there's this stigma and we're trying to get over it that men don't go to therapy. Men need to go to therapy. Men need to be able to find a way to vent this shit out, get this shit out. And we don't tell people because we're afraid that they're going to weaponize what we our help against us. But the reality is that you actually need to get help. If it's getting too much and everything that I just mentioned, just you can't utilize it, you know what I mean? And you done found all other alternative methods to try to get to it and it ain't working, you need to go ahead and get help. And understand that it ain't no shame in that. It ain't no shame in that. The shame is not utilizing something that's there for you to prevent this. That's the shame. Ain't nothing wrong with you if you go and get help. With that being said, I just really want to just say, like, look, man, hey, I can't wait to see y'all Monday. And definitely do me a favor on this episode. Do me a favor. Reach out to me on social media. Reach out to me on Instagram and tell me your breaking point. Tell me when you reached a breaking point and what you did and how you reacted to it. And tell me the things that you did to prevent it from happening again. Tell me, reach out to me, right? Reach out to me and tell me your ways of self-love. How do you handle your emotions? I would love to know. And just like that, another extraordinary thought left this ordinary mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode half as much as I enjoyed making it. Stay tuned every Monday as we bring you another episode. And lastly, don't forget to like this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, and share this podcast because this podcast was dedicated to helping you become a better version of yourself. And I don't know who needs to hear that, but just like we need more sleep, just like we need more money, we deserve to be a better version of ourselves. Stay hungry, stay motivated. I'm out.